Have you ever wondered what happens to royal jewellery when a princess dies? In 2006, you could have bought Princess Margaret's actual wedding tiara for nearly £1 million. Here's what most people don't know. Margaret bought that tiara herself. She saved her own money for it, and that shocked the royal family. But here's the real question. Why did her own children have to sell it? Why didn't the Queen just keep everything in the family? The answer reveals a secret about how the royals really treated Margaret. And it's not what you think. Stay with me, because what this jewellery sale exposed will change how you see the royal family forever. But before we dive in, if you love uncovering the real stories behind royal history, hit that subscribe button right now. New videos every week that go beyond the official narrative. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. All right, let's get into it. On June 13th and 14th, 2006, Christie's London held one of the most significant royal auctions in history. 800 items from Princess Margaret's personal collection went under the hammer. Jewellery, furniture, dresses, even her Christmas cards. When the final gavel fell, the total came to £13.6 million. The jewellery alone brought in over £9 million. But here's what makes this fascinating. This wasn't just any estate sale. This was the royal family allowing the public to literally buy pieces of their history. Intimate possessions, love tokens, gifts from scandalous relationships, things they would normally lock away forever. Today, I'm taking you through the most revealing pieces in that collection. What they sold for, who bought them, and most importantly, what this sale tells us about how Princess Margaret was really treated by her own family. Let's start with the piece that shocked everyone. The Poltimore Tiara, made in 1870, covered in diamonds, absolutely stunning. And Princess Margaret bought it herself. Now, you need to understand, this was unheard of in 1959. Royal women don't buy their own tiaras. They inherit them, they borrow them. The crown has vaults full of them. But in 1959, Margaret went to a Sotheby's auction. She bid on this tiara, and she bought it with her own money for £5,500. That's about £140,000 in today's money. Not cheap. And then, on her wedding day in 1960, she wore it. Her own tiara. Not one borrowed from her sister, the Queen. The palace was not happy. Royal brides wore family tiaras. It was tradition. It showed continuity, unity. Margaret wearing her own purchase. That sent a message. The message was, I am my own woman, even here, even at the altar, even within this institution. Fast forward to June 13th, 2006. The Poltimore Tiara comes up for auction. Christie's estimated it would sell for £150,000 to £200,000. It sold for £926,400, 5 times the high estimate. People weren't just buying a tiara, they were buying Margaret's independence, her rebellion, her statement. And here's the kicker. The buyer was Wartsky, a London jeweller with royal connections. They purchased it on behalf of an anonymous client. To this day, we don't know who owns Princess Margaret's wedding tiara, but we know who doesn't own it. The royal family. They didn't bid, they let it go. And that tells you everything about what's coming next. Princess Margaret married photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones in 1960. He became Lord Snowdon. In the beginning, they seemed perfect. He was creative, unconventional, not typical royal material. And he designed jewellery for her. Several pieces in the auction were made by Snowden himself. Let me tell you about the most significant ones. First, there was a gold and diamond flower brooch. Snowden designed it himself in the 1960s, early in their marriage. It sold for £18,720, 4 times its estimate. Then there was a ruby and diamond cluster ring, another Snowdon original. This one went for £21,600, but the most touching piece? A pair of gold, turquoise and diamond earrings, custom made by Tony for Margaret. These sold for £9,600. Each piece was intimate, personal, made specifically for her by the man she loved. Now here's where it gets emotional. Margaret and Tony divorced in 1978. It was bitter. There were affairs on both sides, public humiliation, the works. After the divorce, Margaret never wore his jewellery in public again, but she kept every piece. Think about that. For 24 years, from 1978 until her death in 2002, she held on to jewellery designed by her ex-husband. She could have sold them, returned them, throw them in the Thames, but she didn't. Here's what I think happened, and this is going to challenge what you believe about royal divorces. Those pieces weren't just jewellery, they were proof that she had been loved, proof that someone had taken the time to design something beautiful just for her. Royal life is public, documented, photographed. But love, real, private love, that's rare. And Margaret needed that proof, even if she never wore the pieces, even if looking at them hurts. These Snowdon pieces sold for far more than their material value, because buyers understood what they represented. Not just jewellery, evidence of a royal marriage's intimate moments, the parts we never get to see. But some pieces in the collection told an even more controversial story, and the palace did not want those stories told. Princess Margaret spent a lot of time in Mustique, a private island in the Caribbean. She had a home there, Les Jolies Eaux, and she had relationships there that the palace absolutely hated. Most famously, Roddy Llewellyn. He was 17 years younger than Margaret. The tabloids went crazy. But Roddy wasn't the only person in Margaret's Mustique circle who gave her gifts. And some of those gifts ended up in the Christie's catalogue. Let me tell you about the pieces that raised eyebrows. There was a gold bangle bracelet. Simple, elegant. The catalogue description? Quote, "A gift acquired during travels. No name, no date. It sold for £4,800. Then there was a coral and diamond necklace. Again, the provenance just said from the collection of Princess Margaret. Nothing about who gave it to her or when. This piece went for £14,400. A turquoise and gold ring. Same vague description. A gift. That's it. Sold for £3,600. Here's where it gets interesting. Go through the catalogue and you'll notice a pattern. Pieces from official royal occasions. Full descriptions. Who gave it? What year? The event. But pieces that likely came from her Mustique years? Deliberately vague. A gift. Acquired in the Caribbean. No mention of who gave them. No dates. Nothing. That's not normal for an auction catalogue. Christie's usually provides as much history as possible. It increases the value. But for certain pieces, they were deliberately vague. Why? Because naming the donors would have caused problems. These were gifts from people the palace didn't approve of. And here's the really telling part. Multiple sources reported that several items were withdrawn from the auction at the last minute. A diamond bracelet, reportedly a gift from a controversial friend, was suddenly pulled. No explanation. Several personal letters and photographs that were listed, gone from the final catalogue. Some were sold privately, others simply disappeared from the listing. The palace couldn't stop the auction. Margaret's children needed the money, but they could make certain stories disappear. What we saw at that auction was the edited version of Margaret's life. The parts the family could live with, the most scandalous pieces, the gifts from the most controversial people. Those never made it to the auction block. And that selective editing tells us something crucial. Even in death, even while selling her possessions, the palace was still trying to control Margaret's narrative. But here's what they couldn't control, the reason the sale had to happen in the first place. Princess Margaret died on February 9, 2002. She was 71 years old. She left behind 2 children, David, Viscount Linley, and Lady Sarah Chatto, and she left them with a massive problem. In the UK, inheritance tax is 40% on estates over a certain value. And yes, that applies to royals too. Margaret's estate was worth millions: property, art, furniture, and all that jewellery. David and Sarah had two choices: pay the tax bill out of their own pockets, or sell enough to cover it. They chose to sell. But here's the question nobody asks. Why didn't the royal family just buy everything? The Queen is one of the wealthiest women in the world. She could have purchased Margaret's entire collection privately, kept it in the family. She's done it before. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, just weeks after Margaret, her jewellery was absorbed into the royal collection. No public sale, no auction, no strangers owning their history. But for Margaret, nothing. The royal family attended the auction, but they didn't bid. £0 spent, and that decision speaks volumes. Margaret was royal, but she was never quite royal enough. She was the spare, the backup, the one who gave up her great love, Peter Townsend, for the institution. And in the end, the institution didn't think her possessions were worth preserving, so they let strangers buy pieces of her life: the tiara she wore at her wedding, the jewellery from her marriage, the personal items that told her story. But you know what? The public disagreed. The sale brought in £13.6 million. The jewellery alone exceeded £9 million. Every estimate was shattered. People wanted these pieces. They valued Margaret's story, even if her own family didn't. So what does a £9 million jewellery auction really tell us about Princess Margaret? It tells us she bought her own crown when the family wouldn't let her wear theirs. It tells us she kept evidence of love, even when the marriage failed. It tells us she lived boldly enough that even her possessions made the palace uncomfortable. And it tells us that the public saw her value more clearly than the institution ever did. That £9 million wasn't just about diamonds and tiaras. It was the final chapter of a woman who spent her entire life navigating the impossible space between duty and freedom. Now I want to hear from you. If you could have bid on one piece from Margaret's collection, what would it have been and why? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button now for more royal stories they don't want you to know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.